Hello there, AP Human Geo students. Let's learn all about making food. Here we go, part 2, agriculture stuff. So what's going on? Whoop, I gotta click back there. Here we go. This is the third agricultural revolution. You got scientists bottling up plants, genetically engineering them. Here's what our landscape is now looking like with all these checkerboard farms everywhere. It's all very standardized, and it's a crazy new world. So this is really what a big theme of a lot of these next slides is going to be. What is more important for planet Earth? Should we produce more food, or should we use more of our land to help our nature friends and our wild animals? Because the more we use up planet Earth, the more planet Earth is going to suffer from pollution and over farming and desertification and all these kind of terrible things that can happen to the planet. So that's usually where I'll have a class discussion, but I'll just keep moving on today. So yep, all these issues, what's happening to planet Earth? Oh no. So here's a really good example of how human agriculture really has screwed up planet Earth. The seventh or maybe fifth biggest freshwater ocean on planet Earth, the Aral Sea, is basically gone. Okay, it's like maybe 5% of it is left. The Aral Sea is in modern day Kazakhstan, and Kazakhstan used to be a part of the Soviet Union. And for all of human history, the Aral Sea is this big giant ocean in the middle of Asia, roughly the size of New Jersey. And what happened was the Soviet Union said, hey, we're going to divert all the major rivers leading into the Aral Sea, and we're going to turn the deserts of Afghanistan or of Kazakhstan into these really great places to grow cotton. And that's still the case today. Kazakhstan makes a whole lot of cotton, and so they diverted all the water that went into the sea. Humans now enjoy the the agriculture and the cotton that's produced as a result of those rivers. However, the Aral Sea doesn't get any water into it. So the Aral Sea today just basically looks like a giant desert, and I'll zoom in on these pictures, and there's a lot of just rusted ships that once were fishing vessels and sailed the Aral Sea, and now it's totally not a sea anymore. So this is a great example of how humans are messing up the environment, and will there be some ramifications from this over time? That's a pretty serious question. So yep, this is what Kazakhstan looks like today. A whole lot of cotton in your life. Here's a Kazakhi girl hanging out with all this new water. So they basically diverted all the water from the Sire Dinara River, and the Aral Sea gets nothing. So yeah, in less than 40 years, the Aral Sea shrank from one of the largest lakes in the world to 1/10 of its size. And see if it's smaller today. Here's camels hanging out by a rusted boat. And then, yep, that's what the Aral Sea used to be. And here you can see over time, 1960 it was still a full sea, but over time, especially starting in the 1980s, it just got down to nothing. So that's really sad. Okay, and another thing I hope you're already quite familiar with is the deforestation of the Amazon rainforest. This has only dramatically increased in recent years. I know the current president of Brazil basically wants to get rid of all the environmental regulations, and he just wants to be like, look, the rainforest doesn't really help our economy directly. We should cut down the entire rainforest and turn it all into a giant cow ranching area. Yeah, he's already making huge inroads in there. And the Amazon rainforest is the most diverse ecological place on planet Earth. It's where so many animal species live, and Brazil is not treating the Amazon well at all. And here's the thing. I'm a big fan of Brazilian steakhouses. Okay, Fuego de Chaco, Texas Day, Brazil. Love it. And so much of that meat comes from cows who are raised and grazing on the land that was once the Amazon rainforest. So these are just some deeper things to consider. The more meat we eat, the less rainforest they'll probably end up being. So, yeah, there you go. All right, this is all former rainforest land. It's now headed by some gauchos, hanging out with some cows. Here they are just clear-cutting the entire Amazon rainforest. And here's a map. It shows you all the red is just being depleted and depleted over time. It's kind of sad. Save the rainforest. Oh. And then, yeah, there they are just cutting it back and, yeah, planting crops in the rainforest. All right, and then here's another one. This isn't really modern history. This is a little bit in the past, but I think it's still very relevant for the human effect on the environment. Well, hundreds of years ago, the United States was known for these giant buffalo bison herds. They were these herds that were just millions of buffaloes. Supposedly, you could even see them from space. You could see these herds moving across the central United States and Canada. And the Native Americans really relied on the buffalo for so much of their food. And they were a huge part of the ecological structure of the early United States. But as our country continued to grow, these herds of millions of buffalo roaming across the plains, they don't really make it easy for farmers to set up farms or for transportation to happen. Because when we first made the Transcontinental Railroad, trains were stopped because there were literally millions of these giant buffalo stopped in the middle of the train tracks. So the United States decided that we would put a bounty on buffalo, and we went out on a process of exterminating the buffalo. We did not kill them all, but we killed almost all of them. There are some places in the United States where there still are buffalo today, but they're largely not in this kind of open moving area. I have seen buffalo in Montana. There's still some there. But yeah, we basically exterminated these buffalo hordes, or buffalo herds. And yeah, I think it's kind of sad. I mean, the buffalo were a big part of the environment here in the United States, and now they're basically all gone. So, yeah. And here's the statistic that shows you. Before the United States became a thing, there were 70 million bison that roamed around our country. Today, there's maybe 500,000, and they're largely corralled in certain areas. And we've replaced the bison with cows, but cows are also corralled. They're not roaming free and wandering onto our roads. So anyway, let's check out some of these pictures here. So here's how the Native Americans did it. They would usually actually try to lead the buffalo to places like the Grand Canyon and charge the herd off the canyon cliffs. And you see there some of the buffalo fall to the bottom and die. And yeah, Native Americans used buffalo for friggin' everything. They ate their meat, they used their skin for teepees, all that stuff. And here's just some buffalo herds. And yeah, see, as far as the eye can see, just imagine that. Just millions and millions of buffalo roaming into Las Vegas. Like, it would be kind of scary, I think. You'd be like, oh my gosh, there's so many of them. And buffalo are pretty intimidating. They're very large creatures, and if they charge at you, they could trample you to death. It would suck. All right, and then this is where you would typically find the buffalo in the blue, but they would go as far out as the the pink area here. So yeah, maybe they would never really get to Las Vegas, but they'd definitely be up in northern Nevada. They'd even get to central California. I think that's kind of wild. Yeah, so buffalo just roaming all over the place. And then here's these early trains trying to get rid of the buffalo. And if you'll notice, the guys on the sides of these early trains have a bunch of guns, and they're just unloading bullets in every direction into these buffalo. Here's another picture right here. It shows you that these guys are standing on top of the trains, just unloading bullets into them. Because for every buffalo head you turned into the U.S. government, you got a bounty. So we actually encouraged people to exterminate these creatures. Yeah, so here's a little thing about it. North America was once home to millions of bison. They were nearly driven to extinction by the late 1880s. The widespread slaughter of bison was sanctioned by the U.S. government as a way to take over land occupied by Native Americans. Railroads that crossed the Great Plains promoted hunting by rail for sport. The U.S. Army provided free ammunition for these safaris. Wow. Okay, and here's just over time the lack of buffalo in the United States. And here's one of the bounty collection areas where they were just turning in skulls of bison. That's probably like 2 million skulls right there in that picture. That's crazy to me. And there still are some buffalo today, and as you can see, they don't make it easy for interstate commerce. But I mean, this is the buffalo's ancestral home. This is their environment. So maybe we should do more to consider consider if the buffalo can roam around and not just us. All right, I already talked about that. All right, and then this is now another kind of current problem in the world. It's a problem called salinization or desertification. And what happens is if you farm the same land again and again and again, salt content will get embedded into the soil of the land. And if land is super salty, you can't grow anything there. And you will especially see salinization in areas that are pretty close to deserts. So it's sort of like the deserts are growing. And this is especially a problem in Africa and China today, especially northern Africa near the Sahara Desert. So, yeah, pretty rough. Climate change also isn't helping this because the less natural rain that happens, people are going to pump more and more water out of the ground, and when there's less water in the ground, more chances that salt is going to stay behind. So that super sucks. And yeah, also if salinization happens here, it can damage your roads, it can damage bricks in buildings, it can corrode pipes and cables. So it's absolutely in your country's interest to do everything you can to reduce desertification, reduce salinization. It will just bring you down bad roads. So there you go. All right, here's what happens when salt gets in the dirt, starts killing the grass. Here's a super duper salty land. Can't grow anything there. And yeah, so if you put water and salt into the soil, the water evaporates, but the salt stays behind. Because usually all water has like a little bit of salt in it. So that's another concern. Yeah, so where is salinization a special problem in the world? I already told you China and Africa, but Africa has 69.5% of its land is considered too salty to grow food. Most of that's all the Sahara Desert in northern Africa. The Middle East makes sense, about half of it's super salty, you can't grow food there. Asia and the Far East, honestly, not a lot of salinization in Asia and the Far East. That's really impressive. Latin America, yep, that has some salinization. Australia, surprisingly, has the most. Basically, all of Central Australia is a giant desert called the Outback, and you just can't grow anything there. And if we look North America has the lowest level of salinization in the entire world, meaning we have the best overall land to grow food, so that's pretty helpful. Asia's also pretty good too, so maybe that's just more evidence of why certain parts of the world are more economically prosperous than others. Well, it's because you can grow stuff in the dirt there. All right, let's check it out. So here's a map that just generally shows you global desertification, and you can see areas in the green are like largely really great, awesome places to grow food. So we're looking at the West, with the exception of Australia to a degree. The Far East is looking pretty good. Central Africa could be pretty good. Most of Latin America is pretty good. So yeah, these are just where food is capable of being grown. Just have that in the back of your mind. And here's a guy being like, "Oh man, this land sucks. Can't grow anything." And here's some bushes that are just struggling to grow through that tough, rough dirt. And yeah, here's just more little charts that show you what happens with arid regions, and eventually the water table drains out, so it just makes everything super salty. And yeah, that land is looking pretty terrible. Don't want to grow anything there. And here's Australia, just how totally screwed Central and most of Western Australia is. Basically, just about everything in Australia gets done in this bottom right corner here, the cities of Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. The rest of Australia, not a lot to say. Okay, and salt, yeah, it's good for your food, but terrible for your plants. And yeah, salinization, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. Okay, so let's just talk about sustainable agriculture. And hopefully this is a word you're already familiar with, so that's why I put it in blue. But sustainable agriculture, it's sort of creating agricultural products with having the environment in mind, with sort of doing everything you can to control your output and control public health, to help the people who live in the nearby areas, to consider animal welfare. This is commonly seen with organic food production, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. I think you could be GMO and sustainable at the same time by just really focusing on how your production affects the environment around you. But typically, it's something that organic just kind of double dips in. Yeah, so sustainable agriculture, I think it's something that makes sense. It's you're trying to look at all aspects of how you are affecting the community and the environment while you're producing your food or your plant products. So, okay, so yep, sustainability at a glance. All this stuff is important to think about when you come up with a sustainable business concept. And then here you are teaching kids how to recycle. That's pretty great. Zero waste to landfill. You wouldn't think of Walmart as being into sustainability, but Walmart's trying their best. Okay, they're giving away food and reusing materials, so that's good job, Walmart. And yeah, here's a bunch of these concepts that are all kind of related to sustainability. Okay, now let's talk about luxury crops. This is a concept that you definitely have to know for Human Geo. And these are non-subsistence crops. So what I mean by that is these are crops that you cannot eat and get your daily nutritious values from. These are crops like tea, cacao, which is used for chocolate, coffee, and tobacco. And some of you are going to be like, Mr. Brown, if I grew cacao and made chocolate out of it, I could eat that all day, every day, and be fine. Honestly, kid, you couldn't, okay? Like, you need to have a more subsistence grain like rice or corn or wheat. Maybe you could live your whole life just eating that. But these luxury crops, the people who grow them basically cannot use them to survive. So you have to sell these luxury crops, and then you got to use that money to buy other crops to keep your family alive. You can't be a subsistence tobacco farmer. It's just not possible. So yeah, you got to sell these crops, and especially sell them around the world. Even if Haiti just grew cacao and served it in Haiti, they would have so much cacao it wouldn't work out. So that's why when you produce luxury crops, your country really wants to focus on international trade. And I'm bringing up Haiti again because back when Haiti was a colony 200 years ago, their entire agricultural system made coffee, chocolate, and sugar. And all of those are not crops you can subsist on. And so Haiti eventually declared its independence from the world, fought some wars with the Europeans and the United States, and no one then wanted to buy Haiti's crops because they were, at war with them. So a lot of people in Haiti really suffered economically because their whole economy was based on luxury crops, not subsistence crops. So that's definitely something to keep in mind when thinking about international business. Okay. So yep, here they are harvesting cacao, and this lady's harvesting tea leaves. So that's cool. Okay, so many humans in the past, and even some today, were full-time herdsmen. And herdsmen are considered to be a part of agriculture. I mean, it's a little weak in the definition of agriculture, but this is where they belong. And how would a herdsman work? Well, they would take a herd of sheep or goats or camels or sometimes even horses and bring these animals to the high parts of their area, their community during the summertime, and then they bring them into the valleys in the wintertime. And you're just sort of walking around all day, watching your sheep eat stuff, keeping them cool, and eventually, over time, your sheep will breed, you'll have more sheep, then you'll sell sheep, and you'll live your life. So this strategy of staying with the animals, being a full-time herdsman, is called transhumance or pastoral nomadism. Both of these terms mean the same kind of thing. And it's definitely kind of an interesting style of life because typically you don't even have a house. You just kind of set up a tent or a teepee and you just hang out with your animals all day and you just kind of wander around with them all the time and keep them safe from goats. Well, just keep them safe from goats. Usually they are goats. Keep them safe from wolves and predator animals. So you're just being a pastor. That's what it's up. Pastoral. Yeah. So And the thing is, you got to really know where in the world, still today, people practice this style of agriculture. And it's not really practiced in either of the Americas anymore. You'll find it a lot in Africa and Central Asia, and even to a small degree in Sweden and Norway, surprisingly enough. So these are pastoral nomads. All right, let's check them out. So yeah, this is just where you'll find them. So especially in like the Arab world, that's a big place, and then parts of the former Soviet Union. And here we go, pastoral, living it up, transhumance, pastoral nomads, all these animals wandering around all the time, hanging out with their sheep. All right, and that's it for this video. See you next time.